So welcome to Efficiency Ratios Problem 2. We're going to calculate the days receivables, also called days sales outstanding. So the same numbers we're going to use as the previous question, problem 1, where we calculated the days inventory. A company has sales of 1.462 million, cost of goods sold of 967,000, inventory of 74,600, accounts receivable of 80,450. So how many days on average does it take the firm to collect on its credit sales, assuming that all sales are on credit? So following the same process as the last question, we ask ourselves, what causes a change in the accounts receivable? And the answer to that is making a credit sale. Then we follow it up with what item on the income statement moves due to make a credit sale. Well, that is already the answer. So it's sales. And since all sales are on credit, it is exactly the same number. So accounts receivable turnover is the credit sales over the average accounts receivable. And here we have 1.462 million and 80,450. Again, I wanted to point out that we have average accounts receivable. It would be a weighted average ideally, or sometimes we use a simple average, but here we are only given the accounts receivable of 80,000, so we just use that here. So we have a turnover of 18.17. That means 18 times a year the accounts receivables are turned over. So that would represent in terms of number of days. If it's turned over 18 times a year, it's clearly done more than once a month, something like around 2/3 of a month. We take 365 divided by that number, and it gives us an average of 20.1 days. Now we're going to do the same thing, but now we're asked to calculate if the days receivables, if half of the sales are on credit. So we're going to do a little bit of a logical think on that. It's a different situation. Let's just use a simple scenario. So imagine you have a hobby business and sell $100 worth of goods every single day. If the sales are all for cash, how high would the accounts receivable be? Well, if it's all cash, there would never be accounts receivable because you'd have cash for the sales. If all of your sales were on credit and you had accounts receivable of $200, how many days of sales would that represent? Well, it's $200. All of your sales are receivable, so this is just 2 days. So $200 divided by 100. Now imagine if 2/3 of your sales is for cash, there should be an is, and 1/3 of your sales is for credit. Then how many days of sale would this $200 then represent? Well, if 1/3 of the sales is credit and it's $200 is how much I have, that means that represents $600 worth of total sales. So 200 is the credit portion. So if that's $600 of sales, then my number of days is 6 days of sales that 200 represents. So that just gives a little bit of a background into how we would answer the question. From an equation point of view, it's pretty straightforward. Let's proceed with that. So we follow the same process. So what causes a change in accounts receivable? Making a credit sale. What item on the income statement moves when credit sales are made? Well, it's sales, but we have to adjust to calculate the credit sales. So the receivables is credit sales over average accounts receivable. In this case, now we have 1/2 times 1.46 million over, and the accounts receivable, again, tendentially we should use average if we would have the option. It gives us a result of 9.09. So that means the number of days is 365 over that, so that's 40.2 days. You can see how different that answer is from the previous one, which was half of that, 20 days. So that gives you an idea of how to use the credit sales in this case. So thanks for your attention, and I hope that helped.